to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go!
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod. Use the
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod and another great episode. We have a very special select handful of guests tonight, which is we will introduce to you in just a moment. But if any of you have seen the fan film series on YouTube, Bucketheads, you can look forward to this one. We got a good discussion in store with our guests here, and we're just gonna dive right in. See you in there.
Another happy landing.
All right, welcome back. And Dan, welcome back. You've been on for a few weeks now, so everyone knows who you are.
Thank you. Glad. Always happy to be back.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on, man. And yeah, honestly, it's kind of weird, like launching in without any background music. We've been doing Ahsoka after shows for the last couple of weeks, and we've been hearing the theme song behind me.
I miss that epic song. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, you know, what the heck? I mean, I can just kind of like play a little bit. Yeah, just for nostalgia. All right. Calvin, hello. Welcome back, sir. It's been a hot minute since you've been on.
It's good to be back in the old escape pod, Josh.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back. And there is another good reason why you are back this evening.
Is it to premiere the sting that you created for me?
Well, you have had some involvement with Bucketheads, so we could chat about that. But yes, that as well. We all know that whenever you're on, it's a fan favorite episode. So
thank you.
Yeah, every time. I was trying to remember what was the last time you were on?
I think it was the holiday special.
Holiday special,
which I think we need to do a revisited. I think you should invite the two guests we have on today as well.
Definitely, that's happening. Next up,
I would love to be there too.
Oh, of course, we'll make it a party. Marco, hello.
Hello there.
Hello, and if you can introduce yourself to our audience, maybe just like a sentence or two as to who you are and what you do.
I can probably do that. My name is Marco Basso. I'm one of the co-creators, co-producers, co-directors, co-everything on Bucketheads, the web series that you guys just mentioned. And thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. And Andy, hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm the other guy. I'm Andy Brown, the other co-everything Marco said, co-creator of Bucketheads, and a cinematographer here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. And you also have another friend of yours here, Adam. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. So Andy and I are members of the same camera union guild, and we've worked on projects over the years, and we're both really into Star Wars. And sort of funny enough, through word of mouth of tertiary friends, I actually found out that Andy and Marco were creating this great fan film called Bucketheads, and I started to research and find videos. I'm like, wow, that is really cool. I really want to work on that. And haven't actually had the opportunity to help out yet due to differing schedules. But huge fan, huge supporter, love it, and super stoked to support these guys and their love of Star Wars.
Well, we need to change that soon, Adam.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, Adam. Yeah, I mean, Bucketheads, guys, like it's awesome. I mean, I watched I've watched it, which would be weird if I hadn't already. And I'm sure a lot of people who've listening already checked it out. But
Josh is watching it right now on his Chromebook, actually, for the first time.
I've got my notes up actually. But, to a lot of people who maybe are listening who have not seen it, perhaps maybe can you guys tell us a little bit about Transmute Pictures and sort of a little bit about Bucketheads as well?
Definitely. So Transmute Pictures is Marco and my production company. We started making Bucketheads under it. We've actually created a not-for-profit company called the Twin Sun Film Foundation now, and that handles Bucketheads. We run a Patreon online. Thank you. Didn't think of it, Marco. I think that was you who got that one. I think I wanted something about Bantha Poodoo Productions, but he shot me down.
Well, it was already taken, and also I do have to take responsibility here for a major poodoo that I did, because it's called Twin Sun Film Foundation when it should have been Twin Suns, which was simply a typo on the application. So now this is just who we are, and every time I tell someone the company name, I have to spell it out, because they're like sun is in like the son of a father, or like the bright ball in the sky. It's always
it's like, are you a twin sun, or are we talking about the twin
exactly.
suns?
It doesn't roll off the tongue
I love
the
it.
same way, that's for sure. But
That's such a good story, though. You're probably getting tired of telling it, but that's pretty funny.
Well, actually, I think this is the first time he's immortalized it in a podcast as such. But so we now run a not-for-profit called the Twin Sun Film Foundation, non-pluralized sons, and through a Patreon that we run online, we're able to generate some funds to make this thing. And Bucketheads itself is a Star Wars fan film set during the Fractured Empire era, after the original trilogy. And our story follows the perspective of a group of stormtroopers, a squad of stormtroopers, sort of navigating the Civil War and really leaning into the perspective of the grunts and people who, aren't generals and don't have the full understanding of the Force and sort of what's at play.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. It's so cool. It's such a cool kind of story to watch, because it's not often that people get to watch a Star Wars story that's like that, right? Like, I think the closest thing that we've had is probably from the opposite side of the war, and in the Rebellion's perspective with Endor, which was an amazing show, and just really got into the nitty gritty of what it's like, to be an average Joe, in the war, and just another trooper with a bucket, I guess, so yeah, super neat perspective on Star Wars. And you guys currently have a prologue and a chapter 2, Ground Zero. Is that the subtitle of the first season, or the title of the chapter 2?
That is just the title of the first episode. It's a bit confusing because we had to very much adapt to our evolving situation. So what we're releasing as Chapter 1 prologue, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3 is what was originally conceptualized as the first episode, subtitle Ground Zero, which is about 40 minutes of television, the way it was originally conceived and written. But because we realized, because of our scope creep and our ambition, that it would take multiple years to just produce the first episode, and nobody likes to wait this long, we decided to instead release it in 3 parts, so to speak. So the chapters themselves don't have subtitles because they make up a single episode. And there's 4 additional episodes to make up the first season. But right now we're just focused on finishing the first episode as it was originally conceived.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Yeah, that kind of makes sense in my head. Yeah, when I think about it.
So will you guys post a master cut of all 4 parts of the first episode once you're done?
Yeah.
Yes, so there will be a standalone release of Chapter 3, and then shortly after, there will be a special edition TM that is just all 3 parts, their original version, with maybe some additional CGI foreground creatures to really bring it that extra pizzazz, and perhaps adding some
definitely add some droid,
some ADR of people yelling
fightings.
no or stuff like that,
That's awesome.
Really subtle
Lots
stuff
of
we're talking,
shenanigans.
guys. Really
Yeah.
subtle stuff.
Only what serves the story, right?
But for those listening, coming in at just over 12 minutes for the prologue and over 17 minutes for chapter 2, that is close to 30 minutes of like super high quality material, to be involved in as like a passion project, right? Like that takes a lot of people to organize and dish out tasks to. So maybe one of you can kind of elaborate on just kind of the scope of work involved in a undergoing like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an immense undertaking. Like this thing has taken on a life of its own outside of Marco and myself, which we're super appreciative of. You know, we've only been able to create such, fantastic content and such a good bit of it already because of this army of volunteers that we have that have helped us do everything. I think sort of during the slow periods of production, which kind of at almost any time, scheduling has been an utter nightmare on this, as you can imagine, with a volunteer army and trying to respect everyone's schedules, but still find times that we can come together and do this stuff. So production is sort of always ongoing. And during slow periods, I want to say we probably have a minimum of like 35-ish people doing things at any given time. And then when we, get geared up for principal photography and into actually shooting it, it generally is somewhere between 70 and 100 volunteers helping out. Wow. So totally just an immense amount of work and people at all times, doing things as best they can with their day jobs, in mind always as well. And we've really, we do try to make this look as best as humanly possible. It was sort of one of the uncompromising aspects Marco and I had right out of the gate, was that we were going to do this, and we recognized either we could do it in a reasonable time frame, or we could just sort of do it when it's done but have it look really good. And we definitely both felt we wanted it to look fantastic and be something that we could showcase for a long time and have everyone be very proud of. So we got less concerned about timelines and more just that we wanted to make sure that what we were putting out there was really quality work.
And we were really fortunate that our passion for this project seemed to be a lot of other people's passion that worked in the film industry or were prop makers, costume makers, people that aren't necessarily in the film industry but have contributed a lot to the Star Wars community out there already. And through many fortunate coincidences and just word of mouth, so to speak, more and more people joined this project and contributed things that we either needed or didn't even know we needed. And it just culminated into what is now Bucketheads. It just sort of grew on its own. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, and speaking just of sort of scope of work, I mean, we really haven't ever shied away from any particular practices with this either. It's been a point of education for everybody on the team to get to try things they don't normally get to or have a reason to try, or stepping up into that next position. But I mean, we do miniature filmmaking, we have virtual production, we've got obviously fantastic traditional post VFX, thanks Kelvin. We don't shy away from any particular process or practice. So there is a very big scope of work because we're trying to incorporate every aspect that we can that we think will just make this the best piece it can be.
Yeah, and I've been on set with you guys a couple times, and I'm always impressed at just how many volunteers you have, how like professional your crew is, and just the level of talent that you guys seem to consistently bring together. And you mentioned like the scheduling, and I can only imagine like how difficult that is to schedule that many people. Yeah. Like I remember the first time I visited the set, and I was expecting like a few dudes with a camera, and there was like, you guys had like everything, and you had a full crew and lighting kit and everything, and I was like blown away. But you mentioned scope creep, and I'm curious, like if you could talk about that, like how much of the project is kind of how you intended from the beginning, and how much of that is like, you mentioned scope, like the scope and the ambition slowly creeping on you guys.
I think it's every department has how do I say that? There's one person at the center of each department that loves Star Wars and has a ton of ambition in their craft, and that spills into the project. So I guess I can bring two examples to this. One, and Calvin is going to appreciate that, on the VFX side, for example, the prologue opens with a massive space battle. And what we conceptualized was a much, much smaller snippet of that. But then our head animator, Brandon, just came to us with so many ideas and just wanting to make it bigger and bigger and having like this almost, I think, 40-second single take opening that was very, very ambitious to get through. But he did it. And when he dropped off the full animation layout to our VFX supervisor, his head sort of exploded because he was like, I don't think we can do this, guys, in the time frame we have. So we just expanded the time frame. And the same is true for construction, for example. For chapter 2, we asked our construction coordinator, Caleb, for just a wall of a building to stage Coruscant against. And he just built a whole city block basically on his own accord. And we were like, well, I mean, we have it now, so we should use it. And rewrote that entire scene.
Yeah, we certainly saw it happening, in front of us. But I mean, Marco's right. Like there are so many people working on this, and there is so much talent that it would be foolish for us to sort of stonewall so many amazing ideas and concepts that people put forward and offers that people have to make this better and better. We're not that precious about our own story. We recognize the elements that we want to keep ingrained in it and things that need to stay, but we are open to people's ideas and incorporating them. And, I think when you're working with this many high-level professionals, you'd be really foolish not to listen to these people.
Wow.
That's great that you guys are collaborative, and it shows on screen, your production value is fantastic.
Oh, 100%.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly,
thanks.
It's so much of the team. I love what Marco and I do for the project, but I have to really constantly shout out that there are so very many talented people putting in the blood, sweat, and tears to make this.
Oh man, it's making me emotional because like Disney, I always get kind of fired up about some of the stuff that Disney does, and they got the big bucks to just toss around and hire the people they need to work on stuff, but like this is just like you said, like the way that it kind of grows with just people who are so passionate about Star Wars, and they're just doing it because they love Star Wars, like you guys putting this whole thing together and then having all these people jump on board, and it's crazy. Like it just blows me away, like just how many people would kind of do that just so lovingly, you know what I mean? Like yeah.
For sure. And I think, we're lucky, and it was also somewhat targeted, like choosing the Star Wars universe. I mean, Marco and I both love the Star Wars universe but there was numerous reasons and facets to why we chose sort of an initial creation of Marco and mine. This was the first project we made when we partnered together initially. And we already had some assets at play. We both love Star Wars, but we also recognized that we could probably get some help on a Star Wars project, because everybody's always dreamed of doing something in the Star Wars world. And as long as, we could bring a degree of professionalism and sort of build the environment for these people to really play in, that's kind of what we felt needed to happen to acquire some very high level professionals. And thankfully we were able to achieve that.
Yeah, and I can only reiterate how much it helped having Star Wars as a backdrop to this production, because whenever we needed something that was way out of reach financially, usually we could wiggle away in somehow by saying, hey, it's a Star Wars thing, it's a fan production, so no one's making money off it, we don't have money, do you want to help us? And more often than not, the answer was just like, yeah, that sounds cool, let's do it. That's how we also managed to get studio space, to get virtual production stuff involved into this, and so many artists wanting to help out, because people are just so passionate about Star Wars.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's reminds me, I think that's how Star Wars Celebration started too. Like the convention, it started as being just kind of a fan organized thing. And it sort of has now been transformed into this official thing that happens every year or two, right? And just thousands upon thousands of people go. And I remember like myself and Bryce and Blake were there in 2017 in Orlando, and I don't think I've ever had a more humbled moment when I was standing in this lineup of people that seemed to go on for just forever, dude. Like just like all the way, like, you know, I've never been in a lineup that big, like ever, right? And then going inside this big convention hall and seeing just how many people like took the time out of their, like, you know, their day or their months or whatever, like to create this amazing costume and, you know, lug it halfway around the world to Florida just so that they can wear it with everyone else. And, you know, thousands of people like going for like Mandalorian photo ops and chanting. And, you know, it's just like, what the heck? Like, like this is crazy, you know, like, it's pretty amazing. And you guys have, you know, found so many, awesome people to help out with this thing. You know, it's that's amazing, and it really shows like the production value of this is, you know, it's like the best I've ever seen for any kind of online, you know, fan film series. Like it's and I gotta say, like the way that it's lined up so well with a lot of in canon events, like huge props, you know, for a lot of that, because you know, the real like hardcore fans notice that kind of thing.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you mentioning this. We certainly try to anchor it around established events so that it doesn't feel like just a random story that we transport into Star Wars, but something that's actually set in that period that we're using as a backdrop. And it's a lot of fun. I mean, Annie and I consume all the Star Wars media because we love it. So when we see an opportunity to like weave in a reference to, you know, something that happened in the Battlefront 2 campaign or in, you know, any of the other movies or shows, then it's always fun to just sneak that in there and see who notices.
I have to admit, jumping off that I don't always consume all of the media, unfortunately. I wish I could claim that I was the smartest Star Wars person in this room, but I'm probably not. But something that has been stupidly fun, you know, coming from the project was just doing research to make sure that we knew what we were talking about and setting this around canonical events. And, you know, I have learned so much about Star Wars in doing this project. I already knew that it was a massive, expansive universe, and there's just so much to know and see and look at and read about. But it's been really cool doing that research and just learning more and getting a better understanding, you know, of characters and different moments. Yeah, it's been a ton of fun.
I got to ask about that.
One of the cool things.
Go ahead, Dan.
One of the cool things you guys do is like you put us in the mindset of, you know, just regular stormtroopers, and like one moment I really loved on the prologue was when they're in Endor and they look up and they see the Death Star explode, and then there's that one trooper that goes like, "Emperor, save us!" Like, you know, to them, like that's a pivotal moment. They're like, "Oh crap!" Like, you know, our base just exploded, and probably like thousands of their friends and family just died. Like, it's cool putting yourself into somebody else's shoes instead of just seeing the rebels' point of view.
100%.
Yeah. I appreciate that you mentioned that, and sorry, I think it was Josh off the bat had sort of mentioned that Endor was kind of in a similar vein to Bucketheads, or vice versa. Bucketheads was in a similar vein to Endor, thematically in a sense, and I thought that was actually really funny because the origin of Bucketheads was actually after seeing Rogue One, which is obviously the sequel to Endor.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and feeling sort of the gravity of the war more than I had felt it prior, and also from, you know, maybe not quite a grunt. Jyn Erso did have quite a special dad, but a grunt-ish type position. You know, someone who doesn't know everything and have a full understanding and is just kind of being lumped into this massive war with bigger stakes than anything they're keenly aware of, at least, you know, from the get-go. So yeah, I think that, you know, I'm glad that Dan, you were able to be transported into someone else's perspective. We definitely, you know, have always tried to ingrain that with this piece and showcase what it's like to be, you know, not the generals or the kings or the queens or everybody in the know, but some of the lesser individuals just kind of going about your life in this war.
Yeah, if I may add to that, it was, I think, in my mind, Star Wars is best when it's not telling us the story of the one or someone that sort of whose story is interwoven with the destiny of the universe. When it's the little man's story, that's when Star Wars really shines as a universe, and that's exactly what we wanted to do.
Yeah, that's a great point to make because I think that's where I think a lot of the original trilogy hits a lot of people at home rather than the prequels because it's sort of Luke's story, who's a farm boy who doesn't necessarily have this chosen one sort of destiny in front of him, whereas Anakin does. Anakin's got this chosen one prophecy that kind of looms over his entire story arc, and it sort of changes, I guess, how people can connect with that character. What you guys mentioned the Battlefront 2 campaign. I just want to bring that up real quick because from the planning of this story, was it from the beginning? Like, did you sort of know we're gonna do this, like sort of post Return of the Jedi in a way, and overlap it, kind of like how Battlefront 2 sort of overlapped with Return of the Jedi, and sort of work that in? Like, was there kind of an initial push to kind of get that implemented right away, like when you're in the planning phase?
The Battlefront 2 campaign was definitely an inspiration for the story that we ended up laying out for the series, because it's just such a perfect jumping off point in terms of a canonical event to jumpstart our story. Obviously, that scene when the Death Star explodes and we see it from the trooper's perspective, that's something that was done in that campaign. And I think it was the strongest part of that campaign. And after that, it went a little downhill because, the whole switching sides, usual blah, blah, that no one really likes. So we were like, let's take the good part and just go from there and make it our own. So yeah, Battlefront 2 was definitely an inspiration when we conceptualized this. The other piece of Star Wars media that we took sort of as a guide for the framework of canonical events to hit alongside our story was I believe it's the third book in the series from Chuck Wending, Empire's End, I think it's called. Sorry, it's been some time.
That was focused on the
original book.
Yeah, the third.
Are we talking about the last part of Dark Empire?
The aftermath.
You're talking Aftermath, right?
Aftermath trilogy,
yeah.
right?
Aftermath from the that's correct. That's we took a bunch of events from that book as well, from that story, to just root our story into that timeline.
Awesome.
Yeah, in chapter 2 we do mention Operation Cinder verbally, and we really wanted to give some canonical context as to why something like a decimation order would be enacted empire-wide, for the bad guys, but that does have some historical context, in humanity for being something. So we just felt that it could help paint a good picture in people's minds as to why this occurred by mentioning Operation Cinder, and that hopefully, a larger swath of the audience would be more familiar with what that story is and why why it's a turncoat story and why these new rules were sort of implemented around it.
And you probably all noticed the absence of an opening crawl that is so typical of Star Wars. We just wanted to avoid that, it being closer to the TV shows and not the movies. And we just feel as storytellers, it's just a more elegant way to convey information if it's sort of like more hidden in the story rather than just spelling it all out in the beginning with a bunch of text.
Right.
And your guys' opening title sequence is so cool.
It's so good.
It's like HBO level.
Oh yeah.
It's so good. The macro, like miniature, kind of like low poly style.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
It's awesome. That's actually that's on my list of things to ask you about. Like, where was that? What kind of inspiration sort of helped that sort of come to be part of the project, and who did all that? Because it's amazing.
I wish we could take credit for this. we got so lucky with this company. After we had created the first the standalone short film, I think we were still in post for it, obviously, but we were starting to do like some marketing and just get it out there so people knew it was coming. And I was hitting Reddit pretty hard trying to get some kind of following going on there. And that was not successful by any means. I could get very little traction no matter what I did or where I posted. However, with the very few comments that came back, one of them was from a guy out of this company, It's Got Stealth, out of Australia. And they do like title graphics and title sequences. and he saw the poster that I had posted, just kind of announcing this was coming, and we started talking, and we showed him, the short film in its current state, and they loved it, and they just jumped on board and asked how they could help us. And they both ideas. So there's two different title sequences, one for the standalone short film and one for season 1. They came up with both concepts. I mean, we helped them, refine them and just give notes and stuff, but truly these were their concepts, and they absolutely knocked them out of the park. The first one, the standalone short film, feels so James Bond to me. I love it, with the little stormtroopers running around the helmet and doing their things. And then they leaned into Micro Machines, I believe they were called, like a toy line from it's like the 90s. And that was for the second sequence for season 1, which you can see a lot of the style in there.
That's what was so great about it, is it ties into that nostalgia of playing with the Star Wars toys, which I'm sure most of us have done when we were kids, and
100%. Yeah, it gives you very much that feeling of nostalgia, and it brings you back to playing with all those toys. I remember having so many myself. I still have many. Let's be real.
Me too. I'm not gonna lie. Just out of curiosity, did either of you, because what was it called? Aftermath, Empire's End. Did you guys read that novel or the Inferno Squad Battlefront 2 book or Twilight Company or any of those?
I did, yeah. I read that novel in its entirety, as well as the Inferno Squad one. I mean, are you asking my opinion, or? Oh,
just curious. Just curious. I mean, I find things that we read can sometimes have an influence on the things that we do. Things that we create or whatever. Was there any sort of factual things in those stories that sort of played up in Bucketheads? Like in
it was
universe
really
stuff?
only this. It was just this one book, because we actually, and when I say the one book, I mean Aftermath from, Empire's End from Aftermath. I'm sorry, it's been some time.
Yeah.
We specifically adopted 2 characters from that novel, Gallius Rax and Ray Sloan. They are part of our story, as well as sort of, let's call them primary and secondary villains, I guess. So we wanted to make sure we get them right, and use them as anchor points for our story. We sort of created our story around the main points that these 2 characters hit in terms of the plot of that book, to make sure that we are true to established lore and not going against it or retconning anything that's already been established.
Yeah, so like there are some major story beats throughout season 1 that lean into canonical happenings, canonical events, and we wanted to make sure that we were using things like that as a guideline for where the story should go, and ultimate resolution kind of the greater world. We didn't want to try and do anything too new in that sense, but we do have an entirely original cast of stormtroopers and some original characters. But as Marco said, Ray Sloan and Gallius Rax, obviously we've adopted.
Great choices to throw in there. Perfect time frame and stuff to use them too. Lots of people involved on this project. Calvin, you're very involved as well. Or with the you have a Leo, I guess, at
the project won a Leo for best visual effects, which was really cool. I was in Ireland, and I got back and found out that we had won, and it's really exciting.
Yeah.
But as the guys have mentioned before, Brandon is the one to really appreciate for the quality of work. My part was definitely small. I definitely appreciate the work that he did, just as far as the animation, and I know he studied those original trilogy dogfights and came up with a sequence for season, for at least for episode 1, and I know that he's continued working on it for the unreleased portions, but just the amount of work that he's done in creating the dogfights and kind of pacing the scenes. And I'm actually curious to hear, like, from Mark and Andy, how much input you guys had in like the choreography of the scenes. because it's quite spectacular what he's done and what the team has done.
The way it went.
Yeah, you go.
The way it went was Brendan sent us a shot and we were just like, holy shit, guys. What the heck? Yes, more.
Yeah, it's been largely his vision. That's the best way to say it. Largely his vision, absolutely. We've given a bit of input where like for story elements, things that might need to happen, or cinematography too, like lensing a little bit and things like that. But for the most part, this has definitely been a baby of his to piece these sequences together, and it's been really cool, honestly, to work them into the story. And again, when Marco and I kind of dreamt it up, it's like, okay, so we need like a 25-second cool action piece to get us going in here, and Brandon's like, okay, here, how about this like 2.5-minute really intense thing? And we're like, whoa. Okay, we love it. Can we get it made?
Yeah, it's quite.
Also, fun fact.
Go ahead, Marco.
Sorry, real quick. The cutaways to the TIE pilots, they're part of that sequence. We filmed way later, after the sequence was already done, and we were already filming chapter 2. And the way we did it was we played back the finished VFX sequence, to create reflections and lighting on our actors. So the lighting you see on the armor is the actual space battle that they are in currently. It was a super neat experience. I think when we filmed that was the first time that I was just in complete Star Wars heaven. I was just like, this is it. We're making cool. Star Wars right now.
That's awesome. That's sort of in line with, I guess, what they're doing now with all the stuff in the volume and stagecraft and the LED screens and everything like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely started doing virtual production because they came out with it in the Mandalorian season 1. I mean, different forms of virtual production have existed for 30-ish years, but they really sort of showcased to the audience what was possible with Unreal Engine through some of their BTS stuff that they released. And I mean, that was, Marco and I watched that, obviously loved season 1 Mandalorian, and we're just like, holy cow, as did most of the film industry, holy cow, how can we get our hands on this technology? Yeah. But we certainly didn't shy away from it once we saw the Mandalorian using this.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. It's an amazing tool. The music throughout this entire project is amazing. It's unbelievable, and the intro as well. Again, but going back to that, it's amazing music choice. I noticed Samuel Kim involved with the score, and perhaps one of you might know a bit more on kind of what that collaboration was like, and the choices going into the beginning credits and the end credits song choices. Like, if you guys could chat about that for a bit.
Yeah, for sure. So Samuel Kim has been a long-time collaborator of ours. I met him almost a decade ago. I think he was still in film school or just fresh out of film school. And I met him on a random project and was immediately just like, this kid can compose. I need to keep him close, so to speak. So he was totally down to do the short film with us back in 2017, 18. And then he decided to start a YouTube channel and totally blew up. But still hung around to do Bucketheads with us for the prologue and for chapter 2. Unfortunately, for chapter 3, he's no longer with us. He had to sort of take a sabbatical for personal reasons. But his sound is definitely a huge part of why Bucketheads feels so real and so firmly rooted in the Star Wars universe. We've had tons of conversations about how much we want to put it in the realm of John Williams versus the more modern Ludwig Göransson style of Star Wars. And ended up sort of in a marriage of the two, depending on the type of scene. Like, the space battles are very much John Williams. Everything on the ground is more modern. And we played around with some other elements as well, just to make it our own. I believe for the short film, we were heavily inspired by Hans Zimmer's work on Dunkirk and that constant ticking that just keeps you on edge, and like a downwards sort of incline of the music that just invokes dread, stuff like that. We had a ton of fun crafting the sound of those scenes and the show in general. But he only made the sounds. The opening song and the closing song are from someone completely unrelated, and I think that is best if Andy tells that story because it was very much his deal.
The closing. Oh, yes. I was just going to say as well, it's always been funny doing any of the sound composing on this with Marco and Sam, because they're both such excellent musicians. Mm-hmm. And, half of the battle of a producer or director or cinematographer is talking the talk. And so sitting in the sound booth with these guys or the composing room or one of their suites or wherever the heck we're doing it has always been a little bit daunting for me, trying to keep up with two very experienced people around, musically inclined. So definitely thankful that both of them have been a big part of the project, because on my own, I have to hum out a lot of things for people to understand what I'm trying to say.
It's worked out.
It's worked out.
I have
the opening and...
Oh, go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I've listened to a lot of Samuel Kim's sort of Star Wars beats that he puts up on YouTube. So the name was very recognizable right away.
Yeah, we were so happy and felt blessed when he agreed to join the project and do this with us. It's been a really cool undertaking working with him.
Yeah.
The opening and closing songs. Yes, I do have a funny story around. Teller in the Tale is the gentleman's stage name. And how did this happen? Marco, were we living together at that point? We were looking for musicians
You thought your then girlfriend knew him personally, but she didn't.
For sure. So maybe we weren't living together at that time. I can't remember, but we were looking for like the sound of what was going to be Bucketheads. And my girlfriend at the time turned me on to one of this guy's songs on YouTube, and I thought she said something along the lines of like, oh, I know him, and like we're friends, and like you could try him if you like his sound, and I really did. And I can't remember if she had found an email for me or if I just found one myself, but I typed up this big message like, here's my girlfriend's name, and like she knows you apparently, and I'm a filmmaker, and do you want to try something? They didn't know each other at all. I completely misread that situation, but he was still super jazzed, and he was like, "But this seems cool. What you guys have going on, and let's talk." And sure enough, it all worked out. We got to work with him, and he created some original scores for us, and it's really worked out for both parties, because those songs have definitely blown up on streaming platforms.
It's pretty amazing.
And to further that, both songs that ended up in the show are the first draft, respectively, that he sent us. Like, there was no process. He was just like, "Here, I made a song. Take it or leave it." And we're like, "This is perfect. Thank you."
I think he allowed a little bit of process. Like, it wasn't anything bad, but we were just like, "Yeah, wow, these are awesome. Like, we are happy to use these."
Yeah,
it's so crazy how like just asking nicely so many times can just work out. And I'm curious how much of it is, how much do you guys think is because people love Star Wars, and how much is it because like you guys are genuinely just great people and you're good at communicating and good at networking?
Yes.
Oh, am I going to be humble or not? That's the question.
Here's your chance, Andy.
Take it and run. No, realistically, I mean, I think it is. I think it's important when you're getting on a project. Anybody that has worked in gig economy or the film industry or anything like that probably resonates with this. But it's important to enjoy the people you're working with when you're doing big long projects like this. So I'm sure there is a big degree of the fact that Marco and I put ourselves out there, and we are happy to bust ass and go and build stuff, move things, and spend our weekends, and not just direct people around, but also to sort of help lead the charge and be there and be boots on the ground. And I think that's definitely helped bring some attraction to the project. But I'm not kidding myself here that Star Wars probably was the first thing that got the glint in the eye.
But to sum up our number one rule of indie filmmaking, don't be an asshole. It's very easy.
Yes.
It turns out it's pretty easy not to. How do you
Yeah.
guys keep people engaged though? I always find that that's the hardest thing with this kind of work is a lot of people get really excited at the beginning, and then as soon as the hard work sets in, that kind of romantic feeling of like I'm super pumped kind of fades. How do you guys manage to keep people engaged for such a long period of time?
Oh, good question, my friend. I mean, again, I think part of it is being the boots on the ground. You know, it's a lot harder for people to back out when you tell them that you're going to give them a ride there and back in the morning. And we do that plenty.
That's a really good one.
You know, when we go to the studio to build and stuff. Yeah, no, totally. And there's many of additional journeys that we have to make sometimes when things don't work out and whatnot. But I think just being a leader type and just showcasing that you're also in it to win it. You know, you've got skin in the game. You're not just behind a keyboard or answering phone calls and directing people around. I think definitely helps people stay attached and wanting to give effort towards this. And I think the product as well is a big part of that too. You know, again, Marco and I, out of the gate, we're like, if this has to take years, it has to take years, but we can't have a bad product to show at the end of this. Like, we're not going to allow that.
100%.
And that passion definitely shines through in all facets, in every conversation and every interaction that we have. And I think people do latch onto that as well.
Yeah, you have to be your own project's biggest champion, because if you don't believe in it, why should other people?
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you to do the first episode?
A little over a year.
Like the first chapter?
Yeah, the very first thing you put out for Bucketheads.
Yeah,
Actually,
each one's clocking it around a year. I know you have an exact.
Yeah, sorry, I have to correct myself. It was a year and a half, because we started filming it in September 2020 and we released in... Wait, am I kidding myself? 2020? We released in May 2021, so it was actually only like 7 months.
Yeah, I think around a year, give or take, 3-4 months is pretty typical for us. Like the original short film took we filmed September long 2017, then we premiered at DragonCon September long 2018.
Dude, we used to be crazy fast. Look at us now.
What's happening? Scope creep, man. The scope is creeping.
This is backwards.
Do you guys know how far? I was just gonna say, do you know how far up like this has been seen? Like, do you know if George Lucas has seen this, or Favreau, or like anybody at Lucasfilm?
I don't know what to believe anymore, Dan. I don't know what to believe anymore. I've heard that a few pretty up there Star Wars individuals have watched this, and then knowing other people who know those people have then confirmed, like, no, I said, I brought up Bucketheads, and they were like, what the heck is that? So, Marco does have some confirmed situations, Marco.
So I can confirm secondhand that Ewan McGregor has seen it and Pedro Pascal has seen it. I can confirm firsthand that Lucasfilm's vice president, Lin Brennan, has not seen it, because when I asked her, she told me that it sounds cool and awesome, but she literally can't see it. She can't watch it, because if she does, she might have to do something about that, and nobody wants that. So please stop talking to me and go away. I was like, sounds good. Linwin, thanks. She was totally cool. She was totally cool, and I get that. It was really cool to just talk to her about it, and she basically said, "Yeah, keep doing it. Just don't show me. Thanks."
Respectfully, so that you guys can keep doing what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, one of the cool things is Lucas doesn't go after their fans like Paramount has against like the Star Trek shorts and stuff that other people have done, and they're pretty good as long as you're not making Star Wars look bad or.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And we've been very open about, how we use the fans' money that donate to the Patreon, and we're trying to be as transparent with all of it as we can.
Yeah. Were you influenced by any other films? Like, I think the first fan film I remember seeing for Star Wars was Troops, which was the play on Pops.
Yeah, we've actually done a couple of film fests in California with Kevin Rubio, who was the creator of that.
Nice.
Wow.
What's the Georgia one that came out at like the same time as the original?
It was.
The one I'm talking.
I know the one you're talking about. God damn it! I can't remember.
Okay, I'll tell my little piece here, and you find the name of it. So this is probably the biggest one that influenced me, at least personally. I think it influenced Marco as well. But there was lots of fan films we did watch. We wanted to do our research and make sure we knew at least the quality that we kind of had to attain to rise to the top. And this group of film students out of Georgia, I think out of Atlanta, Georgia, came out with a very similar tone, theme, style Star Wars fan film, but from Rebel Grunts' perspectives. And it looks like it's a battle on Scarif, I think. And they did a great job with it. And, upon repeat viewings, I see a lot of flaws and issues. Like, I have studied that thing hard because I think they put a trailer out as we had put a trailer out for the first short film, and it was kind of a race to who was going to release theirs first. And I think we even connected with one or two of the guys at one point, and, gave them some congrats and whatnot. But they had a really quality piece, at least as far as visual showcase goes. And we definitely were looking at that as a sort of, okay, like either ours is going to take off or theirs is going to take off.
And both did. And this film is called Star Wars Odyssey.
Odyssey, that's the one, yeah. Which is, again, a little bit, I think, more of a lackluster story, not to try and down talk their film or anything, but just didn't have the same punch as Bucketheads, which I'm thankful for because we released at the same time. But I still thought it was a really awesome piece that I was definitely keeping a close eye on as we released Bucketheads.
And it was very much the inverse of our story. It was the story about rebel soldiers fighting the war on the ground, whereas ours was the stormtroopers fighting the war on the ground.
Right.
Yeah, and there's just so many good ones out there. Honestly, we've watched I don't even know how many at this point. I probably watched 20 or 30 different short films just to see what was out there.
That's awesome. Did you ever
those
come
are
across
rookie numbers? You gotta pump up those numbers, Andy.
I guess so.
Did you ever come across Binks, a Star Wars story?
Oh yes.
Yeah,
sounds familiar.
We did a mock-up trailer for a Jar Jar Binks movie, and it was submitted to the fan films competition a number of years ago. This was probably like 7 years ago, maybe now or something. It was a while ago. Anyway, it's so bad, but it's so funny at the same time. We just had a joke, doing it all. It was a laugh.
Didn't you voice Jar Jar Binks?
We took turns, myself.
God, that's
and
amazing.
Yeah, I did the Emperor, and telling the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and we have a hooded, cloaked person walking through this row of tea light candles, and on the walls like a George Lucas shrine. And then, he whips off his hood and it's just a rubber Jar Jar mask with the creepiest looking dents in it, and it looks so bad. And anyway, it was quite funny to do, but the joy of doing it.
I just found it. I'm totally gonna watch this after finish it.
It's all for laughs.
Be proud of it, Josh. Be proud.
Yeah, don't undersell yourself, Josh.
We had a crew of 3 people, and probably did it within the course of 3 days. So it was a laugh. It was a laugh.
Love it.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of Star Wars fan films. You have something that just a few friends got together and, had fun doing a weekend or a month. And then you have Bucketheads where it's high production value and a year and a half. You have the gamut of just fans coming together and doing something that they love and putting their hearts into it. And it shows. Yeah. It's all there on the screen.
Yeah.
Honestly, as much as I also, I think every Star Wars fan has some issues with Disney and what they've done with the stories and the universe, but I do have to always really pat them on the back for upholding that and not going after the fan films for Star Wars that as Dan has said, just like so many other properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's before the Disney era, I think it was Lucasfilm encouraged even more. I think every year they held a fan films awards, and they've done it sort of less so as time's gone by, but. George, I don't think really cared a whole lot about fan films. He not in a bad way. He just didn't care about, taking them down. He's really sort of almost, I guess, encouraged it in a way with the whole fan film.
Yeah,
thing.
It's definitely not. Disney didn't come up with that idea on their own for sure. That was a holdover from taking over Lucasfilm, LucasArts. But I'm just glad that they're at least maintaining that relationship with the fandom.
Absolutely, yeah. The second episode is set 1 year later after the first one, and we get to see Coruscant in this episode, and specifically level 1313, a little nod to the video game that we all wanted to have and never got. A wonderful Easter egg.
Yeah.
You see us.
I feel like that's where our timeline really fractured, when we didn't get 1313 and everything else sort of went downhill. I bet you there's like a much better universe out there where we got 1313 and the world is just in a much better state because of it.
I believe it.
I believe it too. I'm a believer. Can you guys elaborate on the work maybe put into sort of the sets, perhaps kind of what was involved in filming that sequence, the Stormtroopers raiding that kind of sort of concrete style building.
And also, if you can talk about the lady eating the noodles.
Yeah. I
love that. I love that little button on that scene.
Totally.
Oh boy. Andy, do you want to go first? Or?
Sure. I mean, yeah, Marco touched on this a little bit, but when we originally conceptualized 1313, knowing that, just as you guys have pointed out, we wanted to have a little bit of a nod to a long lost video game that so many nerds wanted to enjoy. And we did think of just doing something relatively simple for 1313 originally, where like the location that we shot it in had kind of the concrete area, the opening of the building where the thug encounter happens. A lot of that texture existed there already, and we were kind of planning on doing something like that. But with the lead up to that being much more simple, and our construction coordinator just sort of said, no, I think I can knock this out of the park. Why don't we transition this entire upstairs of this warehouse to be like a half a city block on 1313? So that was stupidly cool, much wilder than anything we possibly could have imagined. It also only really happened because so very many large shows around Vancouver have donated additional and wasted materials to us.
Some more willingly than others.
Yeah, I'm not gonna necessarily name names here. Some of them were more willingly than others, but for real, these were donations, and we took ultimately probably, I want to say, at least 10, 12, 15 5-ton truckloads worth of materials.
How did you guys store all that?
From these various large shows? It
in
lived
the warehouse.
Because I've been to the warehouse,
same warehouse.
I just have so many questions.
Well, so the entire upstairs, there's a big section of it that is 1313, and there's still a very large room that we walled off that it holds a ton of material. And we also now have 2 additional lockers at an airport that I don't know why I call them lockers. They're a big warehouse, like airplane hangar things, that hold some extra material as well.
Really helps when the owner of the airport is a big Star Wars fan, and again, asking nicely, Star Wars fan, it just works out every time.
So cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But so with all of those things coming together, we were able to build this massive 1313 set. From there, I mean, it was just a matter of figuring out how we wanted to stage and make that a bigger scene than sort of intended. But I always,
Andy, it took 3 months to build that, an additional 3 months to what we had planned, and that was
the scope creep, man. Yeah, the scope creep is crazy. We love it. We live with it. That's how this thing becomes what it is.
Yeah.
But there was, I had always planned in that scene to have someone of note, preferably. For those who don't know, Mayumi Yoshida was the Japanese woman at the noodle bar, who's also played the Crown Princess on Man in the High Castle, the Japanese Crown Princess. So I kind of wanted someone of note to just have a very small little cameo in there and kind of break up the tense situation of the fight. So when Mayumi agreed to it, I was so over the moon, and I made sure that I told her right away that her hair was going to get absolutely destroyed, and I was going to make her look terrible, but that was like the point.
But she was just like, you son of a bitch, I'm in.
She was so in. Yeah, there was no hesitation. It was awesome.
I'm actually currently watching that show now too, The Man in the High Castle. I just got to season 2, so yeah.
Oh, nice, fantastic! I worked on that show. Fantastic show. I loved it all. And yeah, when you see the Crown Princess, that's Mayumi. That's the same gal.
Awesome. I will keep that in mind.
Just to bring it back to 1313 real quick, the visual material that did get released from that show, namely the two main trailers and then the, I think it was E3 gameplay footage, vastly informed the CG sequence that has our ship and our heroes go down that shaft, traveling to level 1313, because at the time it was all the reference that we really had, because Endor hadn't been released yet, which gave us so much more great insight into what Coruscant looked like, and honestly Kenobi as well. Like that really, I wish we had that back then. It would have just informed so many more choices. But the travel down the shaft to the lower levels was an incredibly fun thing for us, because we decided we wanted to do that with miniatures and motion control. So the ship in that sequence is always a real actual miniature in a 3D environment. And we used a Techno Dolly motion control arm to film it in a way that it looks like it's actually flying. And unfortunately, we ran out of time at the end in the post VFX side of things, because we filmed so many different passes of that ship with different lighting that was really interactive as it goes down the shaft. And none of these passes ultimately made it into the final comp, unfortunately. But as I said earlier, there will be a special edition, and that's definitely one of the things that's very high up on my priority list to integrate into that one for the full release.
That's
I just want to add to my favorite part of that whole build, I think, is that when Caleb, our construction coordinator, really started talking to us about the vision of having it be like a half a city block, there was a load bearing beam in the middle of the room. And we all kind of saw it as a great challenge to incorporate, because we didn't think the look of it was right just to leave barren for 1313, but we couldn't actually remove it because it, held up the roof. And that was around the time that we started working with LED panels and LED technology. And instead what we did was we built a like octagonal box around it. And it could hold on each side 4 1x1, like 1 foot by 1 foot LED panels high, and became like a scrolling advert pillar of Orabesh ads that had ads for the various shops that we had built on the street. We also put a lot of attention into what all those shops were doing. One was like a droid shop. One was like a steam power facility of some kind. We had the noodle bar. We had the strip club. We had a couple of abandoned houses. We had the apartment complex. Like every door actually had meaning to it, and we wanted to incorporate those businesses in that scrolling advert pillar. So there was a lot of fun conceptual design around that thing.
I have one more hidden little Easter egg story about Coruscant. At the very beginning, when we first are on the ground with our troopers and the camera tilts down to find them, there's a bunch of characters in the background that are comped in later. We did like an elements shoot, just had a bunch of our friends in like shitty clothes pretending to be vagrants in 1313. And if you look very closely at the right edge of frame, you can see a really big guy carry a much smaller guy with no shoes away. And that is actually me getting carried away by one of our friends who's like, gosh, like 6'5". I don't know. He's massive. And we're like, it would be funny if he threw me over his back and carried me around. And I actually lost my shoes doing that. And it's in the final cut.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. Actually, speaking of Easter eggs and such, is there any more that maybe we haven't talked about already that you might want to kind of spill before the final chapter comes out?
Well, we always try, and I mean, I say always try. I actually have fought putting a cameo of myself in this thing for a very, very long time, but I do have a cameo coming out in the upcoming chapter, so that'll be pretty fun. And all I'll say is that I can grow a pretty fun mustache. It is a real mustache, and enjoy that. I
noticed one fun Easter egg. I think in either the first episode or the prologue, you had a grenade that had 501 on it.
Yes.
That was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to throw those little Easter eggs in there. Unfortunately, with the way the releases happened, we had designed KR8 Crate after the Crate Dragon. before The Mandalorian came out with their Crate Dragon episode. So I just want to throw that out there, that we reincorporated Crate Dragons back into Star Wars first. And I'm always really sad that they got to release that episode before we were ready to release ours, because it was going to be such a cool Easter egg. Like, Outer Rim Garrison here has the Crate Dragon as their symbol. Reintroduce it, and then the Mandalorian just came and stole our thunder.
Oh, jeez.
But vice versa, we did the crate design first before they did it in Endor for the prison arc episodes. There's
Well,
like a brief
that's
moment.
Outer Rim Garrison. I can't steal that thunder. That's not even Bucketheads. That's Outer Rim.
Well, but the crate droid is what I'm saying is this.
Oh yes.
For once, it was something that we actually were able to release first, because Disney has this weird sixth sense to release something after we've already filmed it, but before we've released it, that is just very similar to something that we just did. So maybe we have a mole on the inside that talks to Disney about all our great ideas. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Who made that little droid, that little awesome droid that's like hanging on the back of the trooper suit?
Yeah.
That would be the BC Droid Builders Association, or at least some members of that organization that we approached about this show, and we basically just asked them like, hey, would you like to design a droid, because we thought it would be great to have a droid character in this to make it feel even more Star Wars. It was like one of the 3 pillars that we jotted down originally about, like, how can we make this feel as Star Wars as possible, and droids was one of them. So we just asked about the feasibility of it, and I think they took about 3 or 4 months to come up with a design, and then figure out how to actually fabricate it and puppet it on set, because everything you see with Crate is completely practical. We actually have a 3D CG model of him as well, but I don't think was ever used even for a single shot.
I don't think so. Even the floating shots.
Victoria's been very clear that it's a her, actually. Marco, I have to correct you.
You're right. My apologies.
It's a female
I misgendered our droids.
It's a cool design because it's a nice blend of like the Imperial probe droid and then a mix of the Stormtrooper armor, and it just like blends in.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job designing it.
Mm-hmm.
Our art director Terry Chewy, during the design phase, which was a ton of fun, because we had to figure out, how big could this thing be to fit all these gadgets in it? How many of them would we need? Do they all fit in one? At one point, Crate had little pincer arms, but that went away. It was a really cool design phase, but Terry Chewy at one point put forward a really good suggestion, just thinking about real world scenarios and police units and how they have canine units, and they have their own dog who has a police vest, and so that I think informed a lot of kind of wanting Crate to resonate with the stormtroopers specifically, and have the same sort of model and armor color and everything.
Gotcha. Speaking of sort of practical elements and such, there were a ton of really great costumes. Stormtroopers aside, obviously we had the Ewoks in the prologue. There's been some awesome officer costumes and the Death Troopers and even the on Coruscant, the aliens, the makeup, like just so many cool things. Who was involved with sort of getting all that? And I'm curious, where did you find people to put on Ewok costumes, and where did they get those? And then secondly, just who is responsible for all this like amazing makeup and stuff for those actors on set for the Coruscant sequence?
The makeup has been a culmination of a number of folks. Heather Morledge and my wife, Nicole Olivares, have headed the department for all of the episodes, I believe. Not specifically together, but between the two of them, they've headed for all the various episodes. And then we've had a number of different makeup artists coming in, sometimes to help with the general makeup. Other times, like we had the Zabrak, we had a special makeup artist come in to help specifically do the Zabrak for Chapter 2. So it has been, again, just a massive army of people assisting with all that kind of stuff. But the Ewoks, if I'm not mistaken, are 501st members. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Ewoks are 3 ladies that are rather small in stature, and they were Jawas. Like, I know them as Jawas. But when we came to shoot the prologue in the woods and we really wanted Ewoks, I'm like, I feel like if I ask them nicely and tell them they'll be in the movie, they'll just figure it out. And they did, because they were really excited to be in the movie and build the Ewok suits just for that. And no, they are both Jawas and Ewoks.
Wow.
And all the other creatures you see on 1313 are mostly the result of Aaron Harrison, who's a costume designer who's got a massive stash of just rubber masks and, you know, bits and pieces from various creatures, because he's a costuming enthusiast, in particular when it comes to horror and Halloween. And we obviously have a couple of callbacks there, like our devil horned friend who's in the background is I don't think it's actually an original mask of that character that briefly pops up in A New Hope in the Mos Eisley Cantina,
perfectly.
but it's close enough that we were like, we have to put him in there.
Yeah, the devil people.
Yeah.
And Madison Bissett was another individual who came out a little bit for us, and she brought an awesome mask of a oh gosh, I'm losing the property here.
The Mass Effect type looking fella?
Mass Effect, thank you. Yes. Yeah, she altered a Mass Effect alien mask for us as well, which you see in 1313. So, yeah, there really was a lot of different people lending hands to various aspects of the makeup.
One more, Andy. The noodle bar chef, that's actually Terry Chewick and our art director. And this is another great example of how this project just has a mind of its own. The noodle bar was never originally part of this. It was I don't know who pushed for a noodle bar, but someone did. We're like, sure, that sounds cool. And then Terry like called me frantically, was just like, I'm gonna make a noodle bar chef, and it's gonna be a Mon Calamari, and I've already made the costume because I just really want to make this, and it's in the movie now. You can't change my mind. I'm like, okay, so it's great, Terry. Thanks.
That is amazing.
And
like
he built the Mon Calamari head with animatronic eyes that blink.
It looked so good.
You can't
did,
ask for this amazing stuff to be made. You know what I mean? People are just literally like, here, I have this awesome thing. Can we put it in? Awesome, thank you.
Oh, that's so good.
It's almost like you never want to make any other content that's not Star Wars, because you'd have to like,
it's addictive.
Yeah, you'd have to like pay people or force people or convince people. But it's incredible how many people just love the content and just, like you said, on their own will, like, I want to make this mask and contribute to the project. It's incredible.
That's so cool. I love that scene too. He's just like humming, chopping up some food. Like, so good. I love it. And the stormtroopers, of course, highlighting those as the the heroes of this story. They all looked amazing as well. And I was just curious, are all of those costumes 501st?
Yes, except for two main actors. Troy, we actually built him his own suit. In the short film, he wore mine, but he's just got much stronger thighs than me, so it was very uncomfortable for him to wear it, so we built him his own. And then Victoria is wearing my suit in the show in season 1.
Okay.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, the only Imperial costumes that are not 501st that we use are the Stormtrooper flight suits, like their fatigues. Those, we just wanted some, what would they be wearing when they're not in armor? Well, probably some kind of army fatigue. So we kind of came up with that one. And then in the upcoming episode, where we'll be seeing Gallius Rax, that is also an original outfit coming up.
But this is actually true.
This is where I was leading with it. Yeah, finish
the
it.
501st Legion actually contacted us after seeing the first promo images we released of Gallius Rax in our show, and want to use him as the CRL, the costume reference library, for that costume going forward, because there really is no real life reference of him. There's just some artist rendering. And Nicholas Harrison, who plays him, designed this himself based on what's out there in terms of references and built it.
I got to throw that out there again. this was another case where we like hired Nick to be Gallius Rax, and he was like, "Hey, I can't remember if he had the design in the works already but he was just like, I've got this costume that I've always really wanted to like wear for something like this. Could we use this?" And we were like, "Oh my God, yeah, it's awesome! Like, of course." So yet again, like just individuals, supporters of the project, really contributing and making this thing what it is.
That's so good. I love it. I can't wait to see Gallius. I was actually going to ask you guys about that. Is there any teases for chapter 3? But that's a big one. When is chapter 3 coming out? You said it said Life Day on the trailer, but some audience members might not know.
Marco, doesn't it say Life Day on the trailer?
Yeah, when is Life Day?
Yeah, Marco, why don't you clarify that for some people?
When we shot this in January, we were like, I mean, we have like 11 months left in this year. How long could it possibly take? So I just got a call from our visual effects supervisor yesterday, and he was like, I think we can wrap this up in late February. That's what I have right now. It's virtually impossible to predict when this will be finally finished, just because everyone's a volunteer and they can only dedicate so much time, which makes planning virtually impossible. I really wanted this to be ready for Life Day, but at this point, I don't think it's going to happen. So we need to release a second trailer and just tell people it's probably going to be May the 4th, 2024. And I'm probably just digging myself a new hole, but we'll see.
I want to clarify one point of this, which is that Life Day was not anything Marco and I ever spoke about, talked about, agreed this was going to be the release date. February was always much more realistic in my mind, this being the 4th one of these we've released. And I got a call from someone or a text from someone or something after Marco had made this announcement on I guess our Facebook page or something.
No, it was in the trailer, and the reason it happened was because
you put it in the trailer without putting it by me.
Nicholas Harrison, who plays our Gallius Rax, called me and was like, wouldn't it be really neat if you put that in? And I'm like, yeah, you know what, that'd be really funny, let me put that in. And here we are.
So the trailer aired.
It's his fault.
It's his fault. The trailer aired, he didn't run it by me at all of a sudden I'm getting messages from people being like, what's Life Day? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, well, you're releasing on Life Day. And I was like, are we? What is that? When is that?
I got the same call from Tom as well, who's our visual effects supervisor. It's just like, Marco, I don't know if we can hit this. I'm like, I mean, you have something to work towards at least now.
So Marco's really dug himself a hole on this one. And whenever questions come up
this happens all the time.
Whenever questions come up about Life Day, Marco gets to answer the Life Day question.
I mean, this is actually a great question for you guys. Is Life Day the release day of the Christmas special, or is it Christmas?
It's the release. I think so. It's November 17th. But it's always a bit confusing, I think, for us here in Canada, because our Thanksgiving is in October and Thanksgiving in the States is in November. And I think Life Day is, even though it's sort of the holiday special, it's sort of the actual holiday, and kind of what it means is kind of more oriented around Thanksgiving. So there's usually a lot of confusion with like the holiday special being a Christmas thing rather than Thanksgiving. And, it doesn't really matter anyways. But Life Day, if we want to be precise, would be about 1 month from now. So I think you guys might be better off with the February release date.
Get back to work.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
All I can say is we will release something on Life Day. It just won't be chapter 3.
Right.
Maybe it could be this podcast.
A new trailer.
There we go. Save our bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Oh man, I'll pitch an idea to you. Celebration is coming out next year. Are you guys going to be hanging around Celebration Japan or any?
I thought it was 2025.
Is it 2025? Okay, it might be. Maybe I got my years
sure
wrong.
They made it 2 years.
Oh, is it too weird? Okay, all right, cool. Well, you guys think of any if this is going to be a multi-season thing, I mean, is there any plans to perhaps take this project to one of the next big celebrations and kind of make an entrance, if you will? I mean, I saw the amazing booth you guys had set up at Fan Expo. There was a big lineup to get a photo in there, so I sadly just had to walk by. But yeah, I really appreciated kind of seeing all the love for this project there. So yeah, I was just curious, like, is there any sort of ambitions to sort of have something going on at Celebration one of these years?
I mean, it would be totally awesome. We did actually apply for something at Celebration this year, and they never got back to us, which sounds like a no. But we will try again, see if they'll have us for 2025. I kind of doubt it, because Star Wars Celebration is really all about celebrating the official Star Wars and not these scoundrels fan filmmakers. But we'll just keep trying, and maybe one day we'll have a little presence there. In the meantime, we will definitely be back for Fan Expo early next year.
What's the future of Bucketheads? What do you guys plan on? Like, once you're all finished this, are you gonna make more seasons, or are you gonna try something else? You gonna make a Star Trek fan film or a Mass Effect?
Oh my God. I would actually love to make a Mass Effect fan film. I just don't think I could make the one I would want to make without $1 billion. Anyway, I think Andy and I had to finally swallow some hard pills in regards to Bucketheads and its feasibility. Effectively, we wrote an entire season, 5 episodes, 40 minutes each, and it's been 3 years and we haven't even finished episode 1. So if you extrapolate that timeline, it would take us about 15 years to finish the entire first season that we conceived. And as much as I would like to see the story through, I just don't think that is a feasible timeline for anyone involved, be it us
easy. You
or
just
our
have each
actors
episode
or
be
the people who actually make
you
it.
just have all your actors age 3 years between each episode. We followed Troy as he gets older and older.
You could have it lead into The Force Awakens 29 years later.
I mean, that sounds awesome, but it's definitely a different story to what we wrote. So we'll just have to rewrite a couple things to make that work. But yeah, it's we're going to wrap up this first episode, which is effectively a pilot that shows what this could be if Disney would feel like it. Wink, wink. But after this, we will likely set our sights on different Star Wars stories that are smaller in scope and can actually be realized in under a year. So there will be definitely more Star Wars to come from us, but Bucketheads will probably end with episode 1.
And we do want to go out with a bang, though, because we do really believe that there is a awesome story to be told there that we're only just digging into. So we do very much want to pitch to Disney, see if the story is something that they're interested in taking, especially as we can see they're putting out so many different types of Star Wars stories right now. So we're hopeful that Disney, will see the fandom that it has spawned and the quality of the story itself and be interested in it. But like Marco said, we do have many other short stories in the Star Wars universe conceptualized in various stages of development, and do want to kind of run a bit more with our sister series, Tales from the 501st, which is an anthology series that just gives us a bit more freedom, not having to have actors, work with us for 7 years, but look like they've aged a day, as one example of a problem.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Amazing skincare routine.
Yeah, it's all that product placement cream, whatever product you want to go with. Yeah. We've taken up
blue milk. They're just rubbing blue milk all over their faces.
Yeah, the blue milk. You had an Easter egg in there for blue milk, right?
Oh, we did. Yes.
We even made we made a little commercial for I remember that, I think it's an energy drink. This is
Blue
so
cool.
You hyperfuel for the day. It's another fun little Easter egg we put in there. Fun fact, that was voiced by the official voice of Cineplex, of the theater chain here in Canada.
Oh wow! You guys got to upload that as a separate video to your channel.
Honestly, we should. There's a lot of sort of additional things that we want to do around Bucketheads, like getting some of these fun sound bites out. It's just we only have so much focus in one day, and it does have to go towards wrapping up chapter 3 right now.
Yeah.
And setting our sights on the next short film that we'll be filming, which is from the Tales from the 501st series.
Awesome. And that is that sort of linked as well with Twin Suns, with the same sort of Patreon, supporting that you have going on right now?
Yeah, 100%. That's the intention, is just transition that over, so people are still getting quality Star Wars stories from those donations, but it just becomes more manageable for us to put these things out there.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions before we kind of wrap it up here? Or no, everyone's good. Yeah. All right. Sweet. Sweet.
Your favorite Star Wars fact? Can I ask that one question? I'm always curious because I get to learn a little bit more. There's so many weird Star Wars facts. I'm just curious what all your guys' favorite Star Wars facts are.
Oh gosh,
I'll give you mine just to get your
okay,
brain
sure.
turning.
Yeah.
Now I do have to ask. This is a canonical fact. I'm going to put this out there. Is this a PG podcast? What's the?
I mean, we
rating on
can,
this thing?
PG-13. I mean, if it's an F-bomb, then I might bleep it out, but yeah, go for it.
Okay, you got the bleep function ready. So this is canonical. I will say my favorite fact always of Star Wars is learning that the style of music the Cantina Band plays is actually called jizz, not jazz. Jizz. That is canonical Star Wars. That's my favorite fact.
Thanks, George.
The bleep there.
It's like the robot chicken style. Like the bleep is like a minute late. Awesome. That is pretty hilarious. I don't know if I can top that. I mean, I recently have been reading Rise of the Red Blade, which is one of the more recent novels that came out, and I found out that there was the main character has 2 hearts in her body. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting little thing. I don't really dwell on the anatomy of every alien creature in Star Wars, believe it or not. But I was like, oh, okay, that's a good one. I wonder if any alien creature out there has multiple different reproductive organs, like the original. What was that Arnold Schwarzenegger space movie? Total Recall. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Woman.
Yeah.
So I've got a Star Wars fact to share.
Oh yes.
Go for it.
Do you guys remember? I think in the '90s when Lucasfilm Publishing was just pumping out lots of literature material to get us to buy stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they had those like guides to worlds and guides to droids.
Oh yeah.
My favorite, of course, was the guides to vehicles and starships. The Imperial class Star Destroyer is approximately 1,600 meters long. When you think of that, that's a very, very large spacecraft. But when you look at an X-Wing and you think of the packaging considerations, that's supposed to have a hyperdrive and shields, I go, where does he fit his luggage?
I saw...
And since we're talking to filmmakers on this podcast, willful suspension of disbelief. I rest my case.
Always.
I saw this crazy YouTube video where they did that scaling thing. It's all done with 3D geometry models, all to scale, right? And seeing how big sort of like the Star Destroyer Venator class and the Executor. I was like, oh my gosh, like that's huge. Like it just dwarfs New York and like so many things. I was like, wow. That's pretty mind blowing when you think about it. Because like when you're in these space battles, it like in the movies and so on and so forth, and the games, like getting a sense of scale for these ships is so hard, right? Until you kind of line it up next to like a man-made actual like real world like building or whatever, and then you're like, oh dang, that is massive. Like that's huge.
Yeah.
So
and then you think of Rise of Skywalker and all of those Star Destroyers rising out of
oh man,
what's that? Flat Vexagle.
Yes, right. Just imagine how much material that is.
Yeah. They would have to mine an entire planet so there's nothing but a speck of dust left.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I've taken up a lot of you guys' time. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there how can the fans help you guys out with putting out Bucketheads and your next projects lined up, and maybe what are the socials that people can follow all that news at?
The best way to support us is to head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Twin Sun Film Foundation. That's Sun singular because there's 2, so clearly it's a singular sun. Twin Sun Film Foundation on Patreon. You can help us there in various ways to support the shows and get some sweet swag alongside. Other than that, you can find us on social media at Bucketheads Film. We are on Facebook, Twitter, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That's it, baby.
That's it. Yeah, I'll give you what I'll do is if you can send me those links and things, I'll put them in the description of this podcast episode so that people can find them and check all that out. So thank you so much to all of you guys coming on. Marco, Andy, Adam, Calvin, Dan. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. That was a ton of fun.
Thank you.
See you next time, guys.
Awesome. See you next time. All right, a big thank you to our listeners at home. Thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure you go and check out Bucketheads on YouTube. If you've just been listening to this entire podcast and haven't seen it yet, then I don't know what you're doing with your life, but go and check it out. Go and subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the Patreon link in the description below. Show some Twin Sons Film Foundation some love and support the fan film and the project. Go and follow the socials on Twitter and so on and so forth. And you know the routine. Ours are at SW Escape Podcast. You can find us on Twitter/X, whatever it's called these days, as well as Instagram. And our email is swescapepodcast@gmail.com. So make sure you shoot us a reply as to how you liked Bucketheads and any further questions you might have for these lovely guests in here about the project. And we're hopefully maybe we'll get them on again when part 3 comes out for another chat. Really enjoyed talking with all these fine folks today. So we will catch you all in the next episode of Star Wars Escape Pod. Lots to look forward to. May the Force be with you.